Scientists tell us they are on the verge of eliminating the scourge of polio around the globe. But it wasn't that long ago that this dreaded disease held Rhode Island hostage. The story of polio, from illness to epidemic to cure, is unique in American history. This terrible disease, which killed thousands of people, hit particularly hard here in southern New England. The trouble began in the early part of the last century. A severe polio epidemic struck New York City in 1916, killing 6,000 and leaving another 27,000 crippled for life. Panic swept the country. Children arriving from New York without certification that their family was polio-free were barred from entering Rhode Island. But the disease could be neither cured nor contained. In 1955, polio claimed over 400 victims in Rhode Island. That gave the state the dubious distinction of having the third highest polio rate in the nation.
When I was a kid growing up, parents were sending their children away to camps to get them away from the water and the humidity. Nobody knew what caused it.
Then, in one of the biggest medical breakthroughs of the century, Dr. Jonas Salk developed an anti-polio vaccine. Public health officials quickly began distributing the vaccine, but there were serious concerns that there would not be enough to inoculate everyone.
Nationwide, polio was an epidemic disease. Anybody who's over the age of 50 or 60 remembers the disease, remembers their parents being very concerned. The number of cases reached as many as 20,000 a year. Of those were cases of paralytic polio.
Last year, 43% of all paralytic polio occurred among children under 5. Children cannot protect themselves. It's up to you to see that they get the protection of polio shots.
By the summer of 1956, Rhode Island had inoculated more than 150,000 children. That year, only 9 cases were reported across the state, and the next year, there were none.
Of those people who had paralytic polio, people who needed to have braces for the rest of their lives, people could live very normal lives. However, those persons who had bulbar polio, the severe form that affected respiratory muscles, the duration of their life can be measured sometimes in months, sometimes only in years.
Society expected those who had been stricken by the disease to overcome their difficulties and get on with their lives. Sometimes the efforts to mainstream polio victims were innovative, like this specially designed car. But news footage of a young boy entering a boxing ring wearing a leg brace seems almost cruel by today's standards. With the successful introduction of the vaccine, southern New Englanders thought they had polio beat, but they were wrong. In 1960, this dread disease returned to Rhode Island with a vengeance. More than 100 new cases were reported that summer. Too many parents had failed to make sure their children received the whole cycle of 3 shots, followed by a booster. The challenge would be to immunize as many people as quickly as possible. Fortunately, Joseph Sinclair, president of the outlet company, knew a man who might have the answer.
So I called him. He was a flight surgeon. And he said, well, I just invented this new gun. Let's try it out. And that was the start of the whole thing.
Dr. Edward Anderson, a Navy captain stationed at Quonset Point, had developed a jet injection gun that was painless and much faster than standard hypodermic injections. The public was invited to the outlet department store for free inoculations. Anxious parents with their children lined up early despite the weather.
It poured rain, something awful. God, it poured. We had them put down the awnings over the windows in front on Way Bassett Street, and people stayed under there, and it just kept coming and coming and coming. And it was funny to see the little kids that come up and they look at the doctor with this big gun, and they start to cry, and they give him a shot. And, oh, that was it. They'd go away smiling.
By the end of the day, 11,108 persons had received the polio vaccine. It was the largest mass inoculation ever held in a single day. The event was a milestone in America's campaign to eradicate a terrifying crippler that stalked the young and innocent without mercy. But Joseph Sinclair is modest about his contribution to the fight against polio.
We just provided a vehicle for inoculating a lot of people and hopefully prevented a lot of people from catching it. It's a terrible disease.
With the introduction of a vaccine that could be taken orally, polio was finally brought under control. Experts caution, however, this frightening disease has yet to be completely eliminated.
Today, for practical purposes, we don't have any polio in the United States. But the risk still exists because of the fact that in a small number of countries worldwide, the polio virus is still circulating.
With the polio epidemics fading from memory and new health threats on the rise, what can we learn from America's experience with the polio virus?
A very important point that we can learn is the tremendous importance of vaccines in the control of infectious diseases today. The era in which we live with infectious diseases is so different from the one of 50 years ago because of the development of these vaccines.
America's successful battle against polio is a tribute not only to the scientists and doctors who fought the disease, but also to the volunteers and concerned citizens who contributed their efforts to the cause. NBC 10 Timelines will continue in just a moment. Please join us when we return.